Well, the Supreme Court has asked Vijay Mallya whether he truthfully disclosed his assets before the court or not. Banks have also asked the Supreme Court to direct Vijay Mallya to bring back 40 million USD that he received from Diageo. Do remember that this was part of the stake sale of Kingfisher that was made to Diageo. But apart from that, even as the Supreme Court has asked Vijay Mallya to give out details of whether he truthfully has declared his assets or not, to remember that two of his assets have already gone up for sale. That was, of course, the Kingfisher villa in Goa, as well as the Kingfisher house, which was essentially the headquarters of the Kingfisher Airlines in Mumbai. But for the second time, even as the bankers consortium led the bid on this, they found no takers for these two properties. Let's go across on the phone line to Meenakshi Bhanja now for more details as to what happened in court. Meenakshi, tell us what happened in court.
Well, this is a consortium of banks again trying to tighten the noose around Vijay Mallya's neck. You'll recall the last date of hearing before the Supreme Court had got adjourned, and today we saw again he's being mounted by the consortium of banks who sought a direction to Vijay Mallya from the apex court to bring back the $40 million he had received from Diageo, which is deposited according to the consortium of banks in the name of his children and bank accounts in foreign banks. Vijay Mallya, on the other hand, today interestingly disclosed to the Supreme Court that he has got no money to refund the 9,000 crore loan, as all his assets have been attached by government and authorities already. So clearly Vijay Mallya towing to a similar line and approach. But at the same time, what is interesting is that the consortium of banks continues to mount unrelenting pressure on Vijay Mallya before the apex court.
Now, as far as the $40 million, that he received from Diageo are concerned, Vijay Mallya has continuously maintained that was a chunk of money that he received in blocks, essentially, and also that, the banks can't lay a claim to that money.
Well, that is correct, and eventually it will be a subject matter of trial before the Supreme Court. It will be the prerogative of the Supreme Court, the view that it takes. But what is very clear is the fact that the banks are not willing to let go of the pressure that they're mounting on Vijay Mallya, categorically telling the Supreme Court to not buy Vijay Mallya's arguments that all his properties and other financial gains of Vijay Mallya have been attached by the government authorities already. Therefore, we saw, interestingly, the consortium of banks make a pitch before the Supreme Court, seeking a direction from the top court to ask Mallya to refund the 9,000 crores vis-a-vis also the money he has received from Diageo amounting to nearly $40 million.
Right, of course, the hearing on the loan default case of liquor baron Vijay Mallya is continuing in the Supreme Court, where the SBI-led consortium is, of course, asking for 9,000 crore rupees to be given back to them. Now, in parallel developments, of course, Meenakshi, there was another attempt by the consortium of banks to, sell those two properties of Vijay Mallya that have already been attached, the Kingfisher villa in Goa, as well as the Kingfisher house in Mumbai, but no leeway, no headway for the banks over there?
Well, Hina, this matter is sub judice, and the very fact that the Supreme Court is hearing it with such frequency is an indication with the amount of seriousness the courts and also the banks are really pursuing this matter. Because remember, at the end of the day, this is a process which has to be undergone in all sincerity. And the fact that the Supreme Court is listing this plea for such regular hearings itself is an indication that we will be possibly looking at an outcome in the foreseeable future. But like you rightly pointed out, Vijay Mallya again today reiterating the fact that his assets have already been attached by the government authorities, but there is this doubt which is lurking in the minds of even the banks and also somewhere the Supreme Court, because on an earlier occasion the Supreme Court had questioned Mallya and his counsels whether indeed he had gone ahead and disclosed entirely the list of properties that he holds.
Meenakshi, right, Meenakshi, this is Nupur here, but as you're pointing out, that has been one of the contentions that the bank consortium has had for a while now. They have repeatedly gone back to the Supreme Court asking, whether he's declared all his assets, and the Supreme Court also somehow, tightening the noose again and again on that aspect.
Well, that is correct, Nupur. And, like I was reiterating for the sake of our viewers, the very fact that the Supreme Court is hearing these arguments and listing the matter for a hearing with such frequency is an indication that we will be seeing an outcome very soon in the foreseeable future. But the process has to be played out, and that is the reason we're seeing these hearings take place, where what is interesting is the banks are not willing to relent the pressure. The banks are maintaining their line, and the Supreme Court is posing tough questions to Mallya camp, but clearly the Mallya camp also has a right to defend itself, and it is bringing out arguments. But in the ultimate analysis, it will be the final decision of the Supreme Court which will really seal the fate of Vijay Mallya.
Absolutely. As Meenakshi, of course, is pointing out, the banks had conveyed to the apex court even in the last hearing that the $40 million that Diageo paid Vijay Mallya has been transferred to trusts that have been set up in the names of his 3 children, and hasn't disclosed the actual amount that was paid